Hey there, welcome back to Farmcraft. I'm John, and in a previous video I was digging out a section of my pond, and I got my dump truck stuck, and I was trying to push it out using Large Marge, and I did a little damage to the tailgate. And by a little, I mean I just about destroyed it. Yeah, I buggered that pretty good. Yeah, that was stupid. I should have pulled it out and not pushed it out. Whatever. Live and learn. I gotta fix this because I need a functional tailgate. So in this video, we're gonna fix this tailgate, obviously, but then we're also gonna go on to a couple other problems that the truck has. One in particular I find pretty interesting, but first let's tackle this tailgate repair, which is pretty interesting in its own right. All right. Yeah, she's a little worse for wear. You know, overall though, it's not that bad. I just need it straight again. I think I can fix that. Nice thing is the rest of it seemed to hold up pretty well. Yeah. The rest of this stuff's okay. Well, I figured it was worth a try. Yeah, I have to bring it over there. I'm not going to track her all the way over here. It might not be able to push down enough with the bucket because it'll lift up. But if I run the tracks on it, that would do it. It might just absolutely destroy it.
Yeah, no, I was thinking however you bent it in the first place, do the same thing forward.
I guess if I could find 2 trees, that's a good idea. 2 trees at the right spacing would do it.
Knock the trees over.
I'll just bring it up there and see if I can straighten it out up there. Are you ready for some precision engineering? I didn't even really feel much resistance. I had to be really careful not to overdo it. And, you know, my dump truck weighs 16,000 pounds when it's empty. And when it's empty, most of the weight is on the front because that's where the engine is and the cab and everything. The bed is in the back, but it's empty. So there's not much weight back there. I don't know. I'm surprised how easy that was. Yeah, now that I think about it, the dump truck weighs 16,000 pounds. So let's say there's only, and this is being generous, there's only 2,000 on the back when it's empty and the rest is in the front. Well, that would be 14,000 in the front. So 7,000 per axle. There's 3.5 tons that I put on it with the dump truck. The tractor weighs about 12,000, so it was definitely less. You know, this machine, a lot of the weight is in the boom versus the counterweight, so it's pretty balanced over that central point. And when I push down with the boom and pick the front of the tracks up, half the weight of the machine should be on the bucket. It's a 35-ton machine, so you're talking about 17.5 tons that it pushes down with just to pick up those front tracks. I'd say that's about right, and it didn't take much to bend that with it. Good old Marge. Good job, Marge. At least you can clean up your messes that I caused. So if all I needed to do was straighten it out, I could put it back on and I'd be done, but it ripped out these locking pins. This is kind of a problem. All right, I went out to the truck and measured, and it's 45 inches, my measurement. I just need to make this the same and keep these pretty well in line. This is a pretty flexible setup, the way it goes on there. I think it'll be fine. This whole thing is pretty rusted out. Now up here is much more solid, I can tell, but that you know, you can hear the difference and obviously see it there. I think water's been sitting in that for a long time. And even though I don't really want to put a bunch of work into this truck, I think if I don't rebuild that, this is never going to hold, which is going to be really annoying. So we're going to reskin this lower section here and come up with a way to straighten this bottom out and then get that back in there attached reasonably well. Shouldn't have messed up the tailgate, John. That's what that boils down to. Full of mud. These are the bars that hold the door closed when it's latched. They're 1.25 inches and I don't have any on hand, otherwise I'd probably just replace it. So I'm going to cut off the steel that's welded on and clean them up. All of this that's convex, it's supposed to be flat. You know, you could almost say I'm doing body work on the dump truck. Almost. This will give you a sense of what I just did. See how this is sticking up here? This is a dent from the other side, and this is what it looks like now. But all that beating on it moved this bottom edge around a little bit, and I need to try to straighten that again. But this tool really wasn't doing the job. It wouldn't reach far enough down to bend it where I needed it to bend. So here's a piece of scrap. It's about 3/4 inch thick. This is actually part of the cutting edge from an old skid steer bucket. I want it to wrap around, and I don't know if I can get it to bend like that. I'm not going to be able to do a full bend on this just because of the press. But I could start the bend, and then possibly once I weld this in position, I could heat that seam and continue the bend around, maybe. Obviously I could just cut it off and then weld it at a 90 degree, but I think it would be stronger if I could bend it. Sticking out here. The whole bend thing was a nice idea, but it is just so irregular back here. I don't think there's any point in trying, because trying to weld it is going to be a nightmare, at least in one piece like that. So I'm just going to come down and try to get a relatively clean line here, and then when I'm all done I can flip it over and kind of patch the edge that I create to this, and that's going to just have to be piecemeal, I think, because that thing is just all twisted up. That's not going anywhere. I actually did 2 passes on each side. There's a gap right here that I want to close before I weld it. If you weld a piece on, it will pull the bottom piece up while it's pushing the top piece down. Kind of a neat welder's trick. There's also a crack in the skin right here, so I'll weld that up while I'm here. Good thing is, I got that one on, and it looks good. The measurement from that pin to that pin is exactly what it's supposed to be. This is hitting that. Oh, that made the difference. right, that'll do. See, they point towards each other pretty well. Now, I could do a long strip here, but I wouldn't be able to bend it. I'd have to weld that. And I just don't think that's going to be as resilient as having bends. So I'm just going to put bent strips. Take me 3 of them probably to fill that in. Well, I would say that's looking a little better than it did, but we still have more work to do. Looks a little worse on this side. I'm not worrying about that. I think, you know, it's twisted up, but that still has a lot of strength to it. Obviously, I couldn't straighten it out driving the dump truck on it. All right, all that's left to do is weld it up, but it's windy and it's lunchtime, so I'm gonna do that some other time when the wind is not gonna fight me so much. All right, we are all welded up. And I had some cracking in both of these lower corners, so I welded the cracks up and then I went over top of it with beads to really beef it up. And I must say, the new welder is a beast. I don't think I even got close to duty cycle on that thing. Pretty, isn't it? No, but it looks better than it did before. I'm running low on primer, so you'll see me using different types on this. Some brush on, some spray on, different colors. It's all primer. I am taking a bit of a risk. I have not tested this on the truck, and I'm already painting it. There's a chance I'll have to do some modifications, but I'll just do that on the truck. It's kind of a pain putting this thing on, and I don't want to put it on, take it off. Kind of cutting a corner here, but I'll probably get away with it. Guess time will tell. That's primer too, just a different color. I'm using flat black because that's what I have. Gloss black would shed dirt and stuff much better, but I'm not painting the whole thing. I'm just painting what I did to protect it from rust. So I really don't care what it looks like, and gloss would look even more ridiculous next to that. This is going to look ridiculous enough. I guess I should explain. Some people might be thinking, you know, why are you leaving this so junky? And it's because this truck is just not worth putting the effort into. It has an engine that is notorious for low power and braking. The truck's okay as a farm truck. It's not worth restoring. So if it was a nice truck that was worth restoring, I would make this look nice. I'd probably rebuild all of this stuff. But this, it's all about utility. It is a functional truck, and it works good for a farm truck, so I'm just making it work again. It's the next day, paint's all dry. And you can see we're pretty straight. Now on the truck, this is what it sits up against, and that's actually pretty straight too. And I was thinking I'd need the tractor to put it back on, but I'm gonna try it. Gotcha. Close, but not there. Huh. I was worried about this. Oh, now it's too high. How can it be too high? So something's a little bit twisted, and my concern is when I release the gate, I'm not going to be able to close it again. Hopefully I can, but if not, I'm going to have to do some more bending on this thing. That's not cool. Big question is, what is this thing going to do when I release that, and will it be able to grab it again? And I'm afraid it will not. Yeah, it's under so much tension. It's hard to even undo it. Went back up. Huh. All right, it actually worked, but it takes way too much force to open and close it now. One thing I noticed is the pin is hitting on the bottom here, preventing the door from closing all the way. So I got out the carbide burr and the grinder. That helped a little bit, but it really didn't do that much. Here you can see as I release the door, it springs out on this side. So the door is under tension when it's closed. All right, here we are at the mobile shop press. I'm just going to start out with a 1-inch piece of oak. Yeah, I mean, if I push that, it should twist it back the way it needs to be, right? Might be a little bit better. And even with the brakes on, it just pushed the truck. So I guess I need to chock the wheels. Yeah, I've got a thicker board. We'll try this. Oh yeah, that's definitely better. You look right down that crack. That gap that was like an inch is now maybe a quarter. Big difference. So now I should be able to close this thing without too much of a fight. Never super easy, but yeah, there we go. That's reasonable. All right, thanks Marge. But there's more I need to do to this truck, and the next job I come across something that I've never seen or heard of before, and the repair was pretty interesting, so let's get into that. The other thing that I want to do to complete things right now is deal with these belts. You probably heard these things squealing like crazy. I've already replaced these belts once, and look at that. Look at how small that belt is relative to the pulley. I think they might have sold me the wrong belts, and now they've worn to the point where they are narrow for the pulley. And it's very loose. It's extremely loose. But this thing is at the maximum amount that it can adjust to tighten that. So I'm going to rip all these belts off of here, and we're going to go to the auto parts store. I want to have them in hand, even though I think they're the wrong belts, just to have some rough estimate of what length they should be. This is the air compressor belt. That's the one that's got to come off first. So let's get to work here. So this is the belt tensioner, at least for this belt. There are 4 belts on the machine, 1 for the air compressor, 1 for the power steering pump, and 2 for the alternator. They are all tensioned independently of each other, and they are all loose. I mean extremely loose, and this truck's probably only been driven 1,000 miles since I put the new belts on. This definitely has me scratching my head. See, the cooling fan is right there. And I'm going to have to fish the belt over that, I think. I was able to get it down between the radiator and the fan there. Not too bad. All right, next 2 belts are these for the alternator. And look how loose they are. And how small they are on those pulleys. Like, what happened here? Fish this up over those fan blades. And there you go. And one more, and I think this one's a doozy if I remember right. Well, I was just getting ready to put the new belts on, and I think I discovered the problem here. That crankshaft pulley, which is in a very inaccessible spot, is pitted and rusted, and it's very, very rough. So that is just chewing up the belts, making them narrower, and then they all get loose. That explains it. That's the common thing with all the belts that are tensioned with different mechanisms. They all got loose, and it's all because of this. I need to, good grief, I really don't want to have to take that off. Because to take that off, I'd have to drain all the coolant, take off the radiator. It would just be a lot of work. Let me see if I can come up with something that would allow me to sort of resurface, at least smooth out that crankshaft pulley. Simple problem, but that could be an awful lot of work to fix. This is my best access to that pulley. I can get my hand on it, but it's pretty limited. I can't get a grinder in there. I can get a little die grinder in there, but I still can't reach like all the sides of the V-belt to try to grind it and resurface it. I think I've come up with the best solution, and we're gonna give it a try. It's gonna require me making something, I am going to use the truck essentially as a lathe. With all the belts off here, it'll run just fine. The only thing is not spinning the water pump, so you can't run it long. But there's water in the block, and it would take it a while to heat up, especially just at idling. So for the record, the best solution here would be to replace that crankshaft pulley. That would require removing the entire radiator assembly, the air intake up there, this holding tank, these support brackets, this whole thing, the hood. That's a lot of work. I really just need something that's the right profile that I can reach in there and sand the V's of that pulley. Now the ideal tool for this job would be a V-belt with impregnated abrasive in it. I'm surprised nobody sells it, because I could just put it around that pulley and move it back and forth by hand, and it would wrap around the far side, and I could sand the whole thing very easily. But I looked online, nobody sells anything like that. Somebody make it. I don't have any way to make something like that, but I can make something similar. I did see, people have done this online already. I saw several instances of it. It's kind of an obvious solution when you're in this pickle. Like, how do I get something that's that profile? Well, a V-belt is that profile. So combine this with a little bit of thought and some sandpaper, and I can make a tool that's going to make this pretty easy and pretty safe, actually, to use with the truck running, I think. Super glue. And accelerator. Just a piece of some 100 grit sandpaper. You'd probably get the best result to use contact adhesive, but I want to be able to change this easily, so I'm just going to try stapling it on. Of course, I used oak for my piece of wood, so that probably wasn't the best choice. Alright, there you go. Yeah, I've got good reach. Wow. Yeah, that made a huge difference. Yeah, there's still some slight roughness right on the very outer perimeter. Let me change out that sandpaper, we'll hit it again. This is working really well. A couple things to note. My V-belt was so worn out that it's actually a little too narrow. That's why I'm not getting this very outer edge as well as I would like. So I left the old ragged out piece of sandpaper in there, so now this is, two thicknesses of sandpaper wide, because there's one on either side. You could also make this out of wood, the entire thing. It doesn't need to be this flexible rubber. You don't need a V-belt to do this. You could just cut the profile out of wood and have it go as wide as you need it to go. That would work just fine too. All right, I'm also getting the other pulleys while I'm here. They're not nearly as bad, but this water pump fan pulley can use a little work, and it's free to spin, so I can just do this. You get the idea. I'm going to clean all these pulleys up and I'll bring you back. So I thought about treating these pulleys with evaporust or maybe Osfo, but I decided that it's just more likely to make the belt slip. They're meant to be metal on belt. You don't want something in between. And the way to keep it from rusting again is, one, keep it out of the weather, which the hood should do. I think it must have just been condensation over years and years. And then two, run the truck periodically, and it'll, you know, if there's a light surface rust, the belt will just blast it off. But if it gets to the point where it's heavy and pitted, then you've got a problem. So let me get these belts on. I got heavy duty belts this time, better quality, more money. $125 for 4 belts. Love it. So these are the correct belts. I got these from Napa, and here's the part numbers. This is for a 1986 GMC C7000 if you're interested. I'll breeze through putting these belts back on, but I can't resist complaining a little bit. I don't understand. There's so many machines that I have that the tensioner does not loosen enough to allow a new belt to go on without a fight. Like, why don't they just design it so that there's enough movement in the tensioner that you can just put the belt on? But like you see here, it won't go on that pulley. I've got to come up with some way to force it on there when I have no room to work. Man, I really hate this belt. This is the worst one. It seems like it would be the easiest, but it is most definitely not. I'm cutting quite a bit out here, and there were many 4-letter words involved, but it does finally go on right here. Now if I can just get the screwdrivers out, it's on. Alright, got one. Theoretically won't be as hard, because it's not as tight, and it came off. Alright. Belt's on. Getting this around the fan. And here we have another example. The belt won't go on that pulley. And this thing's as loose as it'll get. It's still that hard. It's so unnecessary. Just make it so that the thing will come off when you loosen the tensioner. So I got it over the first pulley, but the alternator takes 2 belts, so I actually have to move this belt 1 more pulley in, and that was going to be even harder. So I'm taking off the tensioning bracket to try to give me just a little more room. And here goes belt number 2, first just fishing it over the fan. And it does go on without too much fight. Click! 3 down, 1 to go. Alright, this one's a little tough to film, but I've already slipped it over the fan, so it just needs to go on that crankshaft pulley right there. And then it goes over the tensioner here, and that pulley there. Yeah, remember this one is pretty darn tight. You know exactly what I'm thinking. I'm not going to bother saying it. Rather than trying to stretch that belt over this pulley, I'm going to see if I can just take the tensioner off. It's just 2 bolts. They're already loose. Even with it all the way off, there isn't room. There's a stupid hose in the way that's going to make that basically impossible. Yeah, that's not going to work. Let me put this tensioner back on and we'll come up with a different plan. Here I'm putting a piece of paracord around it that I can use to pull on it. Between that and a crowbar, I ought to get this thing back on. So now this power steering reservoir is directly in the way. So I take that off. Hey, it's on. Just need to put the bolts back in the tensioner. And I'm cutting that piece of paracord and putting some tension on it. All the belts are tight. Hopefully I won't have to do that again anytime soon. It's my second time doing that job. It's not particularly fun. Not on this truck. Forget to put the power steering reservoir back. Okay. So now that everything's tensioned right, let's start this thing up and notice the difference of the noises. This thing was squealing like crazy whenever I ran it. I didn't realize it had gotten so bad. I bet you it's going to sound a lot better. That is a huge difference. So actually, before I take this thing on the road, there's a couple things I want to do. One of them, you can probably, well, maybe you can't tell because you don't know what those are supposed to be. Not unscrewing, the stud is just spinning. Different spacing. I've got to tighten these so that they get a ground because that comes through the frame. Okay, and of course my wire colors aren't the same. I've got red, brown, and white coming in, and I've got red, green, and blue. Now I'm pretty sure that the white and the blue go together and the reds go together, so that would leave green with brown. So what I'm going to do is we're going to jumper all these and I'm going to test it and we're going to see if I'm right before we go connecting everything. So here's the left turn signal. And here's the brakes. Ruh-roh. I tried it with the engine running just in case that would make some difference, but of course it did not. I have a feeling I'm not actually getting a ground because of that very dirty, rusty plate. So let's fix that first, or at least run a jumper to a known ground, and then we'll know that's not the issue. Well, I just put my meter on one of the studs to the light, and I ground off a little bit of the frame right there. So that is a good ground. And 0.3 ohms. That is a good ground, and that's not the issue. And it wouldn't make sense because the light was lighting, so current can pass through it to ground. So yeah, that's not the problem. Looking a little further in this ratty old wire that comes to my lights, all the connections are good, they're soldered. What I have here is 4 wires. I've got black, brown, green, and yellow. When I go to the other end of that wire, which is right here, I've got brown, yellow, green, and the black is not hooked to anything. And I've got a 4-wire coming into that with a green with a white stripe and this black. What do you bet those are supposed to be hooked together? I don't know what happened there. What a mess. So I hooked those together with a butt connector and gave it a test and had the same results. A funky left turn signal and no brake lights. Now the turn signal I think is flashing intermittently from the steering column. I don't think that's actually a problem with the light back here. Alright, now I'm just checking the wires. The light is no longer hooked up. So I am on the black wire and we are checking voltage, DC volts. Well, this is definitely a Farmcraft video because I was supposed to just throw these lights on here because they used to work. But apparently I have electrical troubleshooting to do. So let's do that. Yeah, that pin makes it so that that dump bed cannot come down now. And I've already done the other side too, so I'm safe to work underneath here. But this is the wire that I'm not getting any juice on. Yeah, it looks fine to there. All right, here's where we are. I traced that wire all the way to here. Visually, it does not appear to be damaged at all, and it goes into this rat's nest of wiring. The wiring on this truck is an absolute nightmare, and I really want to do as little as possible with it. There is a legend. This truck is definitely legend right here, and it does give you some information, I suppose. So I traced the wires to the junctions that it has, and the backup lamps are not getting voltage here either. So it's not like a broken wire. We're not even sending voltage to it when the brake pedal is pressed. Now, these things have a switch somewhere that tells you when the brakes are being applied. And there's two ways to do it. One, it could be a mechanical electrical switch. Basically, when you push the pedal, a button is pressed. Or it can be a pressure switch that when air is applied to the service brakes, because see, air goes through this line into this chamber here to apply the brakes, and there's one of those on each wheel. When air is applied, pressure is applied to that line, there's a pressure switch that then makes an electrical connection and tells you that the brakes are being applied. It's taken me some time to try to figure out which one this truck has. I do have a manual on it, and I dug through and I found that this part here, number 25, would be the pressure switch if it had one. This is the treadle valve. That's basically the air valve for the brakes. And that lives right here. There's that valve. And if it had the pressure switch, it would be right there. And it's not. So it must have the mechanical switch under the dash, which is my favorite place to work. I despise working underneath dashes. I've looked under there as best I can. I cannot see anything. I hear a switch there. So if that switch is bad or there's a wiring fault under the dash there, that would be my problem. So let's start ripping and tearing and see if we can get anywhere with this dumb thing. I'm trying to get to where I think the switch would be, so I start taking the dash apart. So, yeah. Just have a look at that, would you? That just warms my cockles. Hey, check it out. A Bic pen. Score. All right, it turns out the dash was a wild goose chase. I dug under here more and reorganized the wires. It's illuminated right now, and the plug is unplugged. See, I'm pushing the brake pedal. So I'm pretty sure I got the leads on, and now we're pressing the brake pedal. And it is not doing anything. It's just open circuit. There's your problem, lady. All right, key is on. this is the plug for that. And I'm just seeing if we have any voltage. Yes, we have 12 volts on one side. So that confirms my suspicion. We should be getting 12 volts on this red wire that then turns on the brake lights. So let me take the switch off of here and get a better look at it. Grief. I mean, it's impossible to get two hands on it. There it is. So my meter's working. 0.2 is there, 0.1 is the internal resistance. So now we can 100% know we're on the leads correctly and see if this button does anything. So we're open circuit, open circuit. So normally open, this thing's going to come down in between and push those contacts apart. And then when the button is allowed to come out, they're supposed to spring together. And they're just not. It's like they lost their springiness somehow. How would that happen? It's not like anything was done to them. Alright, I was able to get one of them out, and so I can bend this one towards the center now without bending the other one out. So that's past the center. And then this one, I should be able to just put a similar bend on. Okay. Alright, well they are touching now. And if this gets pushed, it separates them. Seems like that would work. Yeah, we're connected because the button's not being pressed. Press it, open circuit. Connection. Open. Working now. I'm a little confused why that switch lost the bendiness of those contacts. My best theory is too much electricity was passed through that switch at some point and it caused the metal to lose its temper. And I think even though I fixed it, it's probably going to fail again. And with it being the brake lights, I decided to just buy a new switch. I have the new brake pedal switch installed and the meter is hooked up to it in continuity. And now with the brake pedal not pressed, it's showing an open circuit. And if you press it, it closes the circuit right as the air is actually being applied to the brakes. So I like that. As soon as you start really pushing on the pedal, it's going to show brake lights. Okay, now hopefully the brake lights will work at this point. We can plug that connector back in and see what happens. All right, let me give you an update. I'm still not getting any voltage back here, even though the switch is fixed. So I have the switch unplugged. This is the plug that goes to the switch. I have verified I have 12 volts on that orange wire coming in. And I've got two wires going out, red and yellow. They're hooked together and it is not shorted to ground. So I'm trying to figure out where that wire's going. So I've hooked up this thing's pretty handy, especially on a truck like this where you have no idea where these wires go. They go into this harness right here and then just kind of disappear, and it's very difficult to trace them. But what this does is it puts a tone in there, and it comes with a detector that we'll look at in a second that can detect that tone. So I have it hooked in with a screwdriver to the spade terminal, so it's hooked to the red and yellow wire, and it's putting a tone on those wires. So I can go on the other side of the firewall, and with this detector here, it will make a noise when it hears that tone. So Hear that? Yeah. It's loudest on that one. Yeah. And that's the one that I would expect it to be, because that is number 6 that says trailer stop. So those are the stop lights. That's what I checked earlier that wasn't getting voltage, which led me to fixing that switch. But what's interesting is there's nothing hooked to it. There's nothing coming out of it. That's like the dead end of that wire. So I'm not sure these brake lights ever worked. The way this thing's wired doesn't seem like they would. So I turned the ignition on, so I should get voltage now at that terminal. I'm clipped to it. Now I just need to touch the ground. And there we go. We have 12 volts. Why would anyone disconnect that wire? I don't know. This is the wire that goes to the back of the truck. Let me see where these are going, because I need the turn signals and I need the stop lights. I don't really need the backup lights. That's really all I'm interested in, is turn signal and stop. So let me see how those are wired, and I will send the stop light back to the back of the truck. So I took the wire that was connected to the backup lights and connected them to the brake lights. So I should have 12 volts back there when I press the brake pedal now. I'm gonna go hit the brake pedal and you tell me if you see anything. Hit now. Letting off. Pressing. Let off. Did it work? All right, yep. Looked like that worked. So I just need to hook these wires up now. Left turn signal, right turn signal, and brakes. It actually works. Now that we know we got it right, I'll go ahead and heat shrink these connectors. With a heat gun, of course. You never use an open flame on heat shrink. And a couple zip ties to get these wires up out of the way. Oh yeah, I guess it's time to take the plastic off. I didn't want it getting scuffed up and making my truck look bad. Yeah, I guess they don't look too bad. Alright, this is Future John, and I've used this thing, which you will see coming up in the next hydroelectric video. It still has to pull that in a bit to close. It's not bad, but especially when I'm spreading stone, I need to be able to have the bed up, driving, and reach out and drop that down. And with it being hard, that's obviously going to be hard. So I want to make that a little better, and I've realized at this point I'm close enough that all I need to do is just bend this bar just a little bit so that it is closer in and this doesn't hit it quite as early. I could also shave a little bit off of that, but I think I'm going to heat this up and we're going to bend it around a little bit. All right, you can actually see it's actually a little bit that way as it comes out. Yeah, of course I'm running out of propane here. I'm also running out of oxygen. All right, take 3. It's a lot closer. It feels pretty good. Well, I messed up my paint job again. When that cools off, I'll hit it. But that's about as easy as it's ever been, so mission accomplished. So there you go, guys. Work on the dump truck. Not just the tailgate, but some other things too. I'm really glad to have those belts sorted out. That was an odd thing. It seems like that would be pretty common actually, but I've never come across that. I'm curious if other folks have. I'm sure somebody has, but how common is that? And why doesn't somebody make an abrasive belt that would fix it? That would be really quick and easy, much easier than what I did. Dealing with wiring is always fun, but hopefully you learn something on sort of the troubleshooting process, at least what I go through. Maybe I should say this isn't how to do it, this is how I did it. The brake lights work. I can now take this thing on the road because occasionally I'll go to the quarry or I'll go to the scrap yard to drop off scrap, things like that. So I do want this safe to use on the road. But the use you're going to see it doing real soon is in the hydroelectric project, because I got a lot more that this guy needs to do. But that's it for this video. Thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next one. No, seriously, video's over. That's it. It's time for you to go. Bye-bye. You're still there? All right, I've had enough. All right, you were right. I needed to paint this. You were just waiting around for me to paint, weren't you? That's a professional quality job right there. All right, now really, beat it. Go away.